Anyway, no, it's not. So let's take a look at this pyramidal pattern. We want to print this output. And how are we going to do that? Do you suppose? We're going to write a nested for loop to print this output right here. So the easy way probably is to count it out. Now you can kind of see that we're going to have to start from the left-hand side here, and we have a 1, a 2. Now these numbers are all right aligned, right? Which is the normal way for numbers to be aligned, by the way. And we want to print these numbers out just like this. So the total number of numbers at the bottom is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So they're basically, you remember how we had columns for the for program 3? Well, we had however many columns there were. Now we're going to have 15 columns. We'll use printf to print those out, right? So let's pop open NetBeans and let's see if we can't write this program together. So pop open NetBeans. Wow, I hate this. I should have done this earlier. How long does it take you guys to open up NetBeans? Is it faster than this? Same speed? All right, fine, no big deal. All right, so we'll do a new project 1, or whatever it is, Java application 1, I mean. Tools, options, fonts and colors, and go 24 if it has it. Yeah. Okay. So here's our code, and we know we're going to have to print out 15 columns, right? So let's just print out the first column, right? The first column is going to be just a 1, and we're going to print out 15 columns. Which column is the 1 going to be in? It should be the 8th column, right? There should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? And then the 1, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more. So we have 7 on this side, 7 on this side. That's 14, and the 1 is the 15. So let's just do something simple, and let's print that out. So we're going to say system.out.println. Actually, we'll do printf. And we'll put the format in there, and what it's going to be, and you can kind of see from the book, it's going to be a 3-digit number. Actually, it's going to be a 4-digit number. Right aligned. This one here is just a 1-digit number. So we could, if we wanted to, we could make this a 1-digit number here. The first one's just a 1-digit number. So we'll do it that way. So the first one's a 1-digit number, but all the other ones are 4-digit numbers. So this one's going to be a 1-digit. They're all integers, right? So how do I print out a 1-digit integer? Right, percent 1, and it would be D, right? D is going to be for the integer. And then the argument would be, we'll just call it, we could call this, we haven't done arrays yet, so you shouldn't have to use arrays. We'll just call this, I'll call it I. We'll declare this integer I for now. And I'll also assign it to 0. It doesn't like this printf because I forgot my semicolon. So for all the other ones, it's going to be 3 digits, right? We could make them all 3 digits if we want to make the loop simpler, because it has it like this, but who's to say it's not like that? Should we do that or not? Yeah, we'll do that. So I'm going to just make all of them 3 digits, even though the first one's technically 1. And so ours is going to look like it's 2 spaces over, but that's okay. It's not going to kill anybody. Actually, it's 4. It's 4 digits, not 3, right? Because we have 1, 2, 3, and then an extra space here. Sorry about that. So now I want to print this out. 15 times. I could copy and paste it 15 times, but I'm thinking that's not the right way to do it. Since we're in the section on loops, so I'm thinking we should probably make a loop. And it said 4 loops, right? So we're going to make a for loop. So how can I make a for loop that prints this bad devil out 15 times?
Have it say 4 as long as the variable is less than 15.
Right. Right. So we can just instead of saying this, we can say for. We'll say int. I'll say j just to be different. Well, j is less than 15. J plus plus. And I'll just put this inside of a for loop like that. Int j is less than 15, j plus plus, and we're going to printf this. That'll be 15 times. Now right now I equals 0, right? So I should get 15 zeros if I print this out. And why is it not like this? Variable j might not have been initialized. Oh, for gosh darn. J equals 0. Got to initialize your thing. So if we run this, we should get 15 zeros. At the end of doing this 15 zeros, I'm going to do printf new line. Just so that we don't have that problem anymore of. So we have 15 zeros. Now, do you guys see a pattern in this triangle?
So decrease by 2 every time?
The middle column increases by a factor of 2 each time, right? So it's 1 times 2 is 2, 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 4 is 8, 4 times 2 is 8, 8 times 2 is 16. So basically the middle column always is multiplied by 2 of the prior one, right? Excuse me?
Sure it's just not added.
Well, like what do you mean?
Just add 2 each time instead of multiplying.
Well, 4 plus 2 is not 8.
Well, I meant like the
8 plus 2 is not 16.
amount of numbers.
Yeah, the number of numbers printed in the tree at that particular level is 2 plus the prior tree. But the quantity of the number in the middle column is 2 times it. So you can use both of those, right? But so basically we need to figure out a way. I mean, how are we going to print out the first line? The first line has to be a 1, but all the other ones have to be spaces, right? It's a little bit tricky, eh? Well, let's try some ideas. So if we say to ourselves, you know, we're going to say I is going to equal 1 because the first number printed is 1. And if it is 1, we know that it's going to be 1 basically 1 times 2 to the 0, I guess. 1 is 2 to the 0. You know, basically every time we loop through printing a line, we have to multiply I by 2 to get that middle column. Can we figure out how to print the line? If I only know if the number is 1, can I print this out easily? If I divide 15 in half, it's going to give me 7, right? If it's an integer. If I divide 17, let's see, how can we figure that out? We need to have a way to figure it out. I guess we can do this. We can say, I like your idea. We can say the number of numbers to print the number of numbers equals 1. So what I really want to do on this for loop is I want to print 7 blanks, and then I want to print a 1, and then I want to print 7 blanks again. You know how to do that? Yeah.
I could use it based on what J is.
Base 10?
No, based on what J is.
Oh, based on what J is, yeah, sure. Sure, because if we know we have to print out one number, then all we really have to do is subtract that number from 15. So 15 minus 1 is going to be 14. Divide that by 2, and that's how many spaces we got to print out, right? So here we can say there's a lot of ways to do this program, but this is one way. So here we say you have to print out one number, and then we can take. We know it's going to be one number, so we know we're going to print out 15 columns. We subtract the 1 from 15, so now we have 14. Divide that by 2, and that's going to give us 7 spaces here. Let's suppose it's this line. We have 3, right? So we have 1 plus 2. Each time we do it, we add that number, add 2 to the number of numbers to print, right? Each time we do the loop, and then it'll say 15 minus 3 is 12. 12 divided by 2 is 6. We have 6 spaces. Or we can just decrement the number of spaces, however you want to do it. But there's all kinds of ways to skin the cat. So let's just try printing out the number of spaces plus 1, right? So here we're not going to print out, if I run this again, we're not going to print out 15 ones. We're going to print out spaces, right? And then a 1. So we'll say the number of numbers equals 1, and we'll say the number of spaces gets, and it would be 15 minus the number of numbers right, divided by 2. Are you with me on that? So then we're going to do, instead of for int j gets 0 to j equals 15, we're going to say from j gets 0 to j less than number of spaces, right? And we're going to print out for S. Actually, we won't even do that. We could just print out 4 spaces. Then after that, what do we do? For int j equal to 0 to j equals number of numbers, we print, I just deleted what I needed, percent for d, comma, and then we'll say, I'll put I in there. And then this one, we're always going to call the same thing again, right? So now what I've got is, there it is. I print out the spaces, I print out the numbers, and I print out the spaces. Let's see if this runs. And now it's looking like, it's looking more like the top line of the output we want. And now the thing that I want you to notice in the way that I'm doing this is I'm trying to build building blocks, right? I'm going to modify that building block until I can get to something that's more general. Some people want to do a top-down. I usually do a bottom-up. But you're always going to do number of spaces. You're going to do a loop for the number of spaces, and a loop for the number of numbers, and a loop for the number of spaces. So we printed out one line. Zippity-doo. Congratulations to us, right? Now we want to try to do let's try to build a nested for loop, right? Because now we've done just the inner for loop. Now we're going to do the outer for loop. So here I'm going to say end class Java application 1. Because we're starting to get to more code than I can see on the screen. And here we'll say end method main. So it kind of helps me know. Remember how I was always putting code outside the main method? Always messes me up. So now I'm going to put in here a for loop. I'm going to say for k, int k gets 0, k is less than, we can say k is less than 15. Sorry, that's not 15. How many? It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's going to be 8 columns long, so k is less than 8. K plus plus. I'm going to open the curly braces, and I'm going to close the curly braces here. And I'm going to say end for, oops, sorry, better put the, and this is the for loop. And sometimes you put, basically print 8 lines, and here's end for print 8 lines. These can get nasty. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to indent this, because now that I've got an outer for loop, I need to indent these ones in one tab more. What's going to happen if I run this just as it is now? It's going to print a column of ones dead down the middle of my screen, right? Going to print 8 ones, right down the middle of my screen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But I don't want 8 ones, right? So I'm getting 15 columns. That's a good thing. I'm getting 8 rows. That's another good thing. My first row is perfect. Something's wrong with my second row. I got to do something about my second row. And actually all these other rows. And what we got to do is we got to look for a pattern that we can apply to these rows. One of them is we're always increasing the number of rows, a number of numbers printed by 2, right? So here we say that the number of numbers gets 1, and here we say that number of spaces gets 15 minus this divided by 2. What we can do is every time we loop through this, we can increase we can mess with these values, right? So every time I finish one of these rows of k, at the end of that, I want to print off a new line to end the row, but I also want to increment the number of the number of numbers, right? Right. So here I'm going to increment the number of numbers by 2. How can I do that? I'm going to increment the number of numbers by 2. I could say number of numbers plus plus, number of numbers plus plus twice, right? A lot of times people say numbers plus equals 2. Right, that's another way of doing it. I don't care how you do it, just make sure there's 2 more of them. Right? So now what's going to happen if I just do this and nothing else? What's going to happen? I'm going to get that. I'm going to get a triangle. The problem is I forgot to change the number of spaces. Right? So this triangle flies all the way out here. That ain't going to do me any good. I'm going to have to also add this. So after I increment the number of numbers, I got to change the number of spaces too. So if I run this now I get a nice little triangle, right? Which is kind of what we're looking for. And I guess, again, the point is I'm building the program in pieces until you get a real... You're not trying to invent the whole thing in my head beforehand. I'm just slowly carving away the onion until I get down to the middle of it. So this right here is our triangle. Except for these numbers in the middle, everything looks good. There's a whole bunch of whiz-bang, golly-gee ideas you could come up with to figure out how to make these numbers. But we don't want to print out I every time, right? We want to print out something else. What is it? Can we make a mathematical equation for the value to be printed out using I and j? Can we do that? This is where the creativity comes in a little bit, right? Well, if I'm going to print out, let's just take a look at this right here. Let's just take a look at this bad devil right here. On the second row, I want to print out 1, 2, 1, right? The third row, I want to print out 1, 2, 4, 2, 1, right? So basically, up until halfway there, I want to multiply it by 2. And then once I'm more than halfway there, I want to divide it by 2, or make it go down by 2. So let's take the quantity q. And the quantity q is going to be on the first number printed. It's going to be I, which is 1, right? Can we agree to that? So we'll call this one q. We'll call this one q0 because j is going to be 0. So this would be q sub j. Sorry for being mathy on you like this, but you know, sometimes you have to do it. You don't have to, but it's better this way. So now, q sub 1 is going to be I times 2, right? Now, this is another way of looking at it. This is actually I times 2 to the 1. And this actually is I times 2 to the 0. This is kind of where creativity pops in. This is just one way of doing it. There's a lot of ways to do it. So now, in the case of row 2, I want to start going backwards. In the case of row 3, I want to add one more and then go backwards. So how can I figure out? So basically, every row is this. How can I figure out what to do with this exponent here? Let's suppose on row 2, I would do, it would be I times 2. If I didn't do anything, it would be I times 2 to the 2, right? So this is where j equals 2. That's the j is the row number. So basically, I mean, how can we put it this way? So we have, in the middle column, column 8, we have 1, and that equals 2 to the 0. Can we agree to that? And then the next one we have 2. So we have 1 at the top, 2. We're just starting from the very middle and going down. We have 2. That's 2 to the 1. Then we have 4. That's 2 to the 2. Then we have 8. That's 2 to the 3, and so on. And we go all the way down. 16, which is 2 to the 4. 32 is 2 to the 5. And 64 is 2 to the 6. And 128 is 2 to the 7. So we have 8 rows, 0 through 7. Typical computer thing. So what I'm going to suggest to you is we can set this exponent to be, to max out at basically whatever j is divided by 2. Or we can just set a number too. Actually, j divided by 2 is not going to work as 3. So this is good. So on row number 2, this should be a 0, right? Yes.
Didn't you just put the exponent as another variable and make it count?
Right. We're trying to figure out how to. I mean, you saw how we split the spaces, and then we did the numbers and then the spaces. Now we might need to split the numbers into the ascending numbers and descending numbers, right? So yeah, we do want to set an increment variable there, but we want to also have a decrement. But we have to figure out how to get to how do we know how to get to the end of it? Yeah.
If the exponent would equal the row number, then you should start decrementing. Because on row 2, the highest you want to get to is 1.
Right. So this is going to be row. We can call it row 0, 1, or 2 if we wanted to, right? So this is the row number, right? But on row 2, we would want to get. On row 2, we want to get to 4, right? So here we have So if we count the rows from 0, this one is 2 to the 0. This one is basically 2 to the row number. If we start at 0, that's the number in the middle. So I mean, I'll leave it to you guys how you want to do it, but I'll just show you one way of doing it. So here we're going to start with this number we have this for loop for the numbers going from 0 to however many numbers it is. But here we're printing out I. But what we really want to do is we want to print out I times the times 2 to the just to say 2 to the j, say. So I'll show you this. I'll just do the first half and then I'll cut it back with the second half. So here I'm going to say, instead of printing I, I'm going to say I times 2 so we have to say math.pow, right? Math.pow 2 comma j. Just to get started on it. So let me just show you what that looks like. When we run this, we're going to 4D I star math pow 2j. It's getting too big. Now let's do math times 2 here. If this runs, I think we're okay. Yeah, so we can't get a number too big for this. How can I do this? Basically, I'll say I'm going to show you just a piece here. So I'm going to call this Q. So I'm going to say int Q gets 0, and Q is going to be kind of my the number that I'm going to print out. And here I'm going to say Q gets where are your numbers? So here I'm going to say I'm going to print out Q. I'm going to say Q gets I times 2, and I'm going to say what's 256 1024. It's going to be if Q is greater than 1,000, Q gets 0. Let's see if this flies. Still gives me 2. I'll say math.pow 2 comma j. Math.pow 2 comma j. What's wrong with that? Incompatible types. J is an int. No, they don't have to, do they? So basically what I did was I got the left-hand side of the triangle right. This part, except for the 256, isn't right. 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32. Did I put too many rows? Oh no, that's right. Yeah, this is right. So basically, let me just get this up here. So this part of everything up to this column here, the middle column, everything on the left-hand side is correct, right? We've got it this far, and the reason is because it was giving me an error because I was getting a number too big for the print format thing to print, right? If I try to put 32,000 in a 4-digit field, it screws up. So, so now what I've done is I've basically said for the number of numbers, I'm going to start with 1, then times 2, then times 2, then times 2, all the way out. But that's not quite right. Right? I actually want to go to half the numbers of numbers increasing and the other half decreasing. We're getting down and dirty with for loops, I'll tell you that right now. So does anybody know how to do that? I mean, now we're going to take how am I going to stop incrementing? I could have another for loop that starts decrementing, right? So what I'm going to do is instead of incrementing all the way through all the numbers, I'm only going to go up to the number of numbers divided by 2. Now let's think about that for a second. If the number of numbers is 1, what's the number of numbers divided by 2? If they're both integers, huh? They're both integers, yeah. So what's number of numbers is an integer, and number of numbers is 1. That's the very first one, right? 1 divided by 2, if they're both integers, is 0. So from 0 to 0, it's not, I mean, I think maybe it'll be okay. Let's just see. Huh?
When you do it, it won't print the middle one.
It's working. Oh, it's not printing the middle one, right? Right. It doesn't print the first line at all. So what we really got to do is we got to do 1 plus that, right? I would have to do equal sign to make that work. So if I run this thing, now I get that next column. You see what's going on? So now, I mean, I've gotten another piece of the puzzle done. Now how do I get that last piece? Well, I got to do the rest of them, right? So now I'm going to have to make another for loop. So here I'm going to go from, so here you kind of see I went from 0 to 1 plus the number of numbers divided by 2. If I do another for loop, I have to do the rest of the numbers, right? I'm going to do a, these are all for loops, but I think a while loop might be better. So can we agree that I've got the first half of the triangle? Now I've got to do a thing to print out the second half of the triangle. So in row number 1, I have to print out nothing. For row number 2, I have to print out the number divided by 2, right? So basically what I can do is I can say this. I'm just going to do this because we're in loops. We're in the loop section. We can use while loops. While number of numbers, let's say Q is greater than 1, right? Because we know for sure Q is greater than 1, except for the first one. The first one, we want to print out that line, but not the second one. But all the other ones, we want to print out however many more there are. We're going to divide it by 2. You see what I'm saying? So I'm going to print out while Q is greater than 1, right? I'm going to print, I'm going to say Q gets Q divided by 2, which if I want, I can say Q divide equals 2. If I want it to be that I'm dividing it by 2, right? And then I'm going to print out Q. Do you feel comfortable with that? What did I do wrong? Am I still running? No. Whoa, that ain't good.
Did you forget a bracket?
What's that?
Did you forget a bracket by the while loop?
Oh, thank you, man. It's so much easier. This is why you guys got to work together, is because it's punctuation and semicolons and braces and everything else. So now, bada bing, we got ourselves a triangle. They call it Pascal's triangle. Yeah.
What did you initialize Q to at the beginning? Like when you...
I just initialized it to 0 because it doesn't really matter, because every time I hit this loop, it's going to reset it.
Okay.
So I guess the what I use is called a divide and conquer strategy. I got the columns, then I got the rows, then I got the numbers to fill in the right pattern, then I got it to fill in the left-hand side, and then I got it to fill in the right-hand side. Now, you know, there's a lot of different ways to do the program. I'm not telling you how to do it, but that's not a bad strategy, is to take a chunk of it. Right? And so now let me show you what I'm going to do here. Is I'm going to, in this code here, I'm going to put my comments. I'll say file name is Java application 1.java. And we'll call this one author. And you see how I got to put a space to make those things line up? If I just put this, it won't be aligned properly. We don't want that. We want this thing beautiful. And we'll say section. And it's going to be cs116 02 Monday, Wednesday, winter 2017. And then description. Basically completed prints 8-row Pascal's. It's called Pascal's triangle. Jeez, Georgie. And this is problem 5.19. Problem 5.19, page 194. Could I have Googled the whole answer? Yes. There's plenty of ways to get this code. And this is fine, this is fine. I would put in here declare variables. And here I would say this is going to be the first number in the first row, right? It's the middle column. This here is the used in a loop. I'd say it's a temp value. Number of numbers is kind of self-explanatory. Number of spaces is kind of self-explanatory, so I wouldn't necessarily even comment these. So here for K, it's print 8 lines. For J, and in here I would put, like for this for loop, I might say this for loop, prints 8 lines of Pascal's triangle. I'll even say 8 rows, whatever. Try to use the same language, but. And then here, I don't need this. So this would be print preceding spaces. Here's print ascending numbers. Here's print descending numbers. And then here he misses print new line. And here would be increment counters. So this kind of shows you how. I mean, I would basically comment the code towards the end after it's kind of done, because a lot of times as you're developing, you don't necessarily know. But you see that now you've got a complete. This really isn't a very big program, but this is a 2-star program. So the amount of code wasn't really that complicated, right? The amount of code wasn't a lot of typing, but the thinking, it took a minute. It took a minute to figure out how to chop this into chunks so that I could get to it. But after you do this a couple 100,000 times, you just come up with these things. I mean, but you guys could have come up with a totally different way of doing it. Would have also worked. Any questions about that? So, I'm thinking about starting some daily exercises, because I think it's useful for some people to do a little program every day rather than a big honking program every week. This next program 4, if program 3 is not 100%, if you're not 100% comfortable with it, program 4 is going to be brutal. Try to push yourself through that this weekend, if at all possible. If you had a piece of cake, you go ahead and try to do it 5 minutes before it's due. But I really would rather that you came to my office, talked to me about it, talked to the tutors about it, talk to each other about it, and get comfortable. After program 4, your life should be back to normal. But you're going to have to stress for 1 more week. Sorry, it's got to be done. All right, my friends, we are